We currently live in a new Renaissance era where so many renowned, experienced actors as kids are now all grown up and are becoming the new generation of talent to watch. Some examples prove that having that star power is not genetic, but there's other examples that are doing a solid job of taking on that mantle. Jack Quaid, in my opinion, is one of the latter examples. He's just gregarious and he knows what works for him, which is great. But I also feel like this is his way of slowly adding in new elements to his skill set as an actor while also maintaining that familiar tone that we're so used to. Novocaine's premise is basically when a meet cute has a hiccup and suddenly a kidnapping occurs, and so Nate, the lead, has to go rescue her as a one-man army. I mean, it's like this premise was built for an actor like Jack. There's so much room to have moments of humor, violence, romance, all packed into a solid action-adventure film. Jack has already showed his acting prowess in Scream 5 and The Boys. Hell, even this year he's coming off of Companion, which I absolutely adored. And while it's certainly not a new concept, it is a good, clever gimmick of having the lead not be able to feel pain and trying to morph himself into like a pseudo superhero. And this film isn't callous about the severity of congenital insensitivity to pain. With a little bit of research, you can see how extremely hard it is to deal with a condition like that. In fact, the film itself purposely takes the first quarter to show how challenging it is for Nate having to consume everything through a straw, even saying how the life expectancy for them is 25 years. And so I love that Nate has this cautious, almost paranoid behavior because, well, it is that scary. But in this isolated context of the film, they try and do the whole I'm gonna turn my curse into a blessing thing, and it makes for a hell of a joyride. Naru from Prey I thought does a decent enough job. Nothing against Amber Midthunder, but it kinda throws me out for a loop when you realize how strong of a character she was in Prey, and then to be minimized to just the damsel in distress role was kinda sucky. But hey, that's the role, nothing Amber could do about that. Still, I enjoyed their relationship. In fact, I love that they had that tragic element to really have that bond over, because as much of a turn your brain off and enjoy the carnage feel this movie has, it works because that relationship between Nate and Sherry was already established. So by the time the kidnapping happens, you're rooting for Nate to have that superhero kick-ass needle drop moment. Having said that, it's still ridiculous that this dude was so protective and wary of not taking damage, really went on this life-threatening Zorro vendetta mission for a girl he really didn't spend that much time with, but that's what makes the heightened reality of movies so fun. But yeah, one of the things that this movie uses best to its advantage is Jack's excellent comedic timing. Like, sure, there was a few times where the comedy teetered a little too much into the slapstick humor that I'm not really fond of, but again, Jack was able to work his magic and it made it work. But obviously, the biggest noteworthy element to the film by miles was the effects and just how visceral the gore was. Every action sequence was an absolute blast, and again, the film was smart enough to make the most out of this premise. There was a certain primal and on-the-fly-esque style to the combat because it's clear that Nate has no experience fighting, so it was cool to see him kinda just get creative and survive. And yeah, each sequence, oh my god, it kept surprising with how gnarly and painful the gore looked. So many creative scenarios allowed for them to really just have fun with the effects. Gore right now in general in horror is at a great spot. Coming off of last year with The Substance and Terrifier 3, we're in a really good run of awesome displays of good gore. And the movie just leaned into absurdity in such a fun way. Like, I'm not really even sure if a gun would operate normally after being tossed into a deep fryer. And the pacing of this film is decent enough, I guess. Once your high of the gore wears off, you realize that the movie could have done with 5 or 10 minutes of less screen time. It's not a make or break deal for the movie, but it would have made it neater. And this might not be too related to the reasoning behind that, but you can very clearly tell that this movie was meant to be released during the Christmas time, and unfortunately that's not the case. So there's extra parts, like for example the robbers being dressed as Santa Clauses, that just feel out of place. And on that note, at a certain point you realize that this is trying to do the whole Home Alone but R-rated thing, and you start to question, why is that house booby-trapped? And it's not really a great example of this, and it's certainly not gonna have anything to contest against a movie like Better Watch Out. But in general, I just like that the movie gives you expectations through its various forms of marketing, and it actually tries to deliver on its promises. However, there are things that do hold me back from loving this movie. Like I said before, Jack was great, but he was great in Companion as well, and I prefer Companion much more. My biggest problem with the film is that while the concept of the film on paper is smart, during the movie you can't really connect 100% with the character because we can't react along with Nate to empathize with him when he takes damage. Horror in movies always prides itself on trying to one-up itself all the time and be as visceral as possible, and this movie has that in spades, sure, where you do end up flinching and wanting to look away because of how visceral it looks, and then you realize, oh, it's not that serious because Nate is making a joke out of it.
Oh, fuck! Wow, that hurt! That one hurt the most!
So it may certainly be my own opinion, but I couldn't get as invested in the stakes as I would have liked. Also, I gotta be honest, I don't like the fact that Jacob Batalon is the same character in every movie he shows up in. It gets exhausting, and it'd be great to challenge him with a role that actually tests his acting ability in more ways than one. All that being said, it's still a great afternoon flick. Get drunk with your friends, and it's sure to be a great time. But that's it for me. I'd appreciate a thumbs up, subscribe, and sincerely yours, Anthony.